So you asked two great questions here. What are the metrics to be used in evaluating your development office in terms of what they raise annually net, right? So what are some metrics to use? And then second, you describe your team as a couple of full-time people, a couple of part-time people in your development department. How would I structure their time, or how would I suggest you structure their time to really get the greatest results? So I'm going to tackle both these questions. The first one, metrics. I think it's very important to keep it simple. We do have a scorecard approach that we teach organizations to use, but it's really built upon some very simple numbers. You can track hundreds of numbers. Let me give you just a handful. And the very first one is the most important one. In my mind, it's really ultimately the only one that matters, which is total giving. So what is the total giving that we are receiving through the course of the calendar year? Not broken down by programs, et cetera, total giving. If total giving is not going up every year, and our economic environment isn't unusual in the region or the country, then there's something that we need to look at very, very closely. So what is your total giving number? And of course you want to be aware of what are you spending in relationship to that number. But the most important number is the total giving number. The second most important number is one that hardly anyone ever looks at, which is how many long-term giving commitments do we have in place? Meaning multi-year giving commitments. And of course, if you're this advanced, planned giving commitments. But long-term giving commitments would normally mean pledges over a period of years. The reason why I place that as the second most important number is it tells me how are we doing in terms of shifting people from giving year after year to understanding that we have a vision and a plan, and we're asking them to make a commitment over the long haul. We want to be retaining donors over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And to do that, we have to have people making long-term commitments. So even if that number is rather small, I want to know what that number is, and I want to see that growing over time. Now the others, of course, that to me are essential to look at, and I'm shocked at how rarely I talk to leaders who know what these numbers are off the top of their head or have even looked at them recently. Okay, so that is total number of donors, not gifts, total number of donors in your population this past year. How many donors did you retain in this year prior to the last calendar year? That's a critical number. So if you had 800 donors in 2015, I want to know how many will you have retained at the end of 2016 calendar year. Another number is donors regained. So we've had a lot of people give over the past 5 to 7 years that did not give last calendar year. How many of those are we regaining? So number of donors regained. And then last and lower on the priority scale for me is donors recruited. If those other numbers are healthy and moving forward, amazingly enough, donor recruiting tends to take care of itself. So a number of new donors, while important, is less important than those others. So hope that addresses your question. I could talk, this is a huge topic, but I want to give you the essential numbers. Now, your second question I absolutely love, because most of the time I find that we don't have clarity on this. And so we are adding people, we have people in these different roles running these different programs or events, but we don't really have a sense of how should they be using their time. So I love your question about how would you structure their time. How would I structure their time if I led your organization? So I'm flattered you would ask me this question. So what I encourage people to do is get people focused on people, okay, givers and potential givers, rather than just programs, events, and their use of time. So their use of time is important, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But what is most important is we want their energy and their focus placed on people rather than events and programs. Now, what do I mean by that? First off, each of these team members, if you got 4, they need to have clearly defined with them, clearly defined how they define success for their role. That's the question. How do you define success for your role? And it's helpful to ask them that, to define that, and then also share with them your perspective on what success looks like in their role. Most of the time people will say, well, I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this. That's not helpful. You're going to do 100 things when you're working here. What we have to be clear on is, what does success look like for this role? How do we know when this role is working? So you've got to have clarity on that, no matter what their role is. Now, next, I teach there's only 2 roles in development. No matter what the titles are or the responsibilities are, there's only 2 types of roles. One is a person who builds relationships actively with people, ultimately leading them to give. The other role is someone who supports the work of building relationships with people so that they give. So there's only 2 roles. Like Jimmy Collins, who is the COO for years at Chick-fil-A, would say, he would tell people, you either need to be selling chicken or supporting someone who is. In development, you're either building relationships with donors or you are supporting someone who is. So those are the 2 roles. So in a team of 4, what I would want to know is, who are our relationship builders? Who are the people who are going to be spending time face-to-face and in small groups, connecting and communicating and building those relationships, ultimately asking them to give? If you have a development director, personally, I believe that 50% of their time, if not more, should be spent outside the organization, spending time with donors face-to-face. So the relationship building roles have to be defined on who they're focusing on, not just their time. So they're spending at least half their time with people, and their focus is on specific people, then you're going to be on the right track. So who are they focusing on? And are they spending time thanking and reporting to those givers? And are they following up from previous conversations? So when I talk to a relationship builder, before I worry about their time, I want to see, who are you focused on? And if they can't show me a list of 100 to 200 people, this person is not going to be successful in the long run unless they make that shift. So they have to have clarity on who they're focusing on. Now, the support team, their role is to maximize the time and energy and money that we're putting into building relationships with donors. So that could be communications, it could be data and system support. But no matter what your role on the team, you've got to be thanking donors well, being a part of reporting to them well, and even if you're not out there, being able to, being out there in the community, being able to thank people, report to them, and build relationships via phone and email. Via phone and email if you are inside the organization. So I think those are a couple things I would want to see a support team doing: communications, data and system support, because that's what helps all that stuff run fluidly and smoothly. And then, are they spending time thanking, reporting with people, and is there evidence that they are able and are consistently dialoguing with givers via phone and via email, building those relationships with those people that maybe are not on our face-to-face list? So, summing this up, I've kind of covered the 2 different roles, kind of what I would expect of them. Now here's how I would tackle the use of time thing. Team members on development need a very short list of things clear for them. One is, they've got to know what success looks like for their role, as I mentioned. 2 is, they need to have a personal development plan. They need to know what you as the leader believe are their strengths and weaknesses, and what they can be doing to improve their ability to achieve success in their role that you've gotten clear, right? So they need a personal development plan. They need to know what they're working on to get better. And then thirdly, you want them to be evaluating their use of time at least once a year. So instead of you evaluating their time, they are evaluating it by tracking it for 2 weeks and then meeting with you and the team to discuss how they're using their time and how they can improve. So I've covered a lot there because you gave me such great questions. I hope this is helpful. I love digging into this kind of essential detail that's most needed for your team. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.